The waters of the Persian Gulf and the wider Middle East have always hosted far more than commercial shipping and fishing boats. They are a stage for power, deterrence, and crisis. In recent years, the world has watched Iran transform from a regional actor constrained by sanctions into a state that can export weapons, influence battles from a distance, and present novel military challenges to far larger powers. The unveiling of the Shahed Bagheri, a vessel optimized to carry, launch, and sustain large numbers of unmanned aerial systems, crystallizes that transformation into a single shocking image: a floating base, not for manned fighters but for swarms of lethal drones. This is not merely an incremental step in Tehran's military evolution. It is a conceptual shift, where traditional carriers were designed to project the concentrated power of highly trained pilots in multi-role jets. The Shahed Bagheri embodies an asymmetric logic: replace a few expensive, hard-to-replace platforms with many cheap, expendable, networked platforms that can overwhelm defenses by quantity, coordination, and novel tactics. The consequences are strategic, operational, and economic. The ship forces regional navies and global powers to rethink defensive posture, logistics, and the rules of engagement in literal conflict zones. In the chapters that follow, we explore how Iran arrived at this design, how the vessel works, what it can and cannot do, and how its existence changes the calculations of militaries, merchants, and diplomats across the globe. Iran's path toward a drone carrier is rooted in decades of strategic necessity and improvisation. From the Iran-Iraq War to the present, Tehran has been operating under constraints. International sanctions limit access to the latest fighter jets, carrier-class ships, and high-end electronics. Geography places the country on vital choke points such as the Strait of Hormuz, and Tehran's strategic culture emphasizes deterrence by denial and asymmetric options rather than symmetrical matching of adversaries. Over the past 15 years, Iranian engineers and commanders found a cost-effective answer to these constraints in unmanned systems. The Shahed family of drones, initially intended for surveillance and tactical strike, proved remarkably adaptable. Iranian operators refined endurance, fuel efficiency, guidance, and simple but effective warhead integration in vehicles that could be launched from trucks, shipping containers, and eventually at sea. Lessons learned in proxy theaters, including the use of Shahed variants in Yemen and reports of Iranian-origin drones used in distant conflicts, convinced Tehran's leadership that drone massing and dispersal could impose an outsized effect on rivals, who relied on expensive interceptors and integrated air defenses. Building a sea platform dedicated to those drones became a natural next step, a way to move the launch point forward, to provide operational flexibility beyond the reach of land-based airfields, and to complicate an adversary's targeting problem by introducing mobility and ambiguity. In short, the Shahed Bagheri is the product of a strategic logic that asks how to convert limited means into persistent, scalable coercive power, and it is a deliberate response to the hard lessons of sanctions, asymmetric campaigns, and the global proliferation of anti-access weapons. The Shahed Bagheri's design philosophy is straightforward and pragmatic. Rather than trying to imitate an American supercarrier with catapults, arresting wires, and a full-size air wing, Tehran converted a large commercial hull into a drone mothership, a wide, reinforced deck for simultaneous drone operations, modular below-deck hangars fitted for rapid rearming, maintenance bays tailored for the relatively simple propulsion and avionics of Iranian UAVs, and robust command and control centers stacked with satellite links, high-frequency radios, secure data links, and hardened racks for mission planning. Launch and recovery systems are deliberately low-tech where possible. Rocket-assisted launchers, rail systems, and parachute or net retrieval for certain airframes, because these methods reduce signature and maintenance burdens and allow quick turnarounds. Crucially, the ship embeds a mission suite designed to orchestrate large numbers of UAVs as a coordinated swarm, software for task distribution among vehicles, encrypted mesh communications to permit resilient command even under jamming, and sensor fusion systems that allow operators to allocate roles across reconnaissance, electronic attack, decoying, and kinetic strike, Defensive measures on the Bagheri are modest compared with a Western carrier. The ship is not intended to survive extended standoffs with major naval powers. Instead, its survivability doctrine leans into mobility, dispersion, camouflage, and redundancy. The vessel operates with support ships that can provide point defenses, decoys, and resupply, and it uses distributed basing, operating within easy reach of friendly ports and under the protective cover of Iran's coastal systems to reduce exposure. The net effect is a platform optimized for persistent, distributed UAV operations across littoral and semi-open ocean environments, rather than for blue water dominance. The deployment of a drone carrier raises thorny legal and ethical questions. International law governing naval operations, freedom of navigation, and the use of unmanned systems in maritime spaces is still evolving. If drones launched from a commercial-looking vessel strike commercial ships, determining attribution, intent, and legal responsibility becomes messy. States may invoke different legal categories on piracy, terrorism, naval warfare, each carrying different diplomatic consequences. Ethically, the ease of launching lethal force from a vessel that does not put pilots at risk lowers the threshold for violence and complicates restraint mechanisms. Diplomatically, the Bagheri introduces ambiguity. Iran can plausibly deny direct state responsibility for certain drone operations if they are conducted by proxy groups or irregular units, even when the carrier is clearly under national control. This ambiguity undermines traditional crisis management channels and complicates efforts to build consensus for sanctions or military responses among international partners who may disagree on thresholds and remedies. If the Shahed Bagheri proves operationally valuable, it may inspire imitators. Other states or non-state actors could pursue similar conversions. Low-cost seaborne launch platforms for UAVs, modular drone motherships hidden as commercial vessels, or clusters of smaller tenders that disperse drone capacity across a flotilla. This proliferation would complicate maritime security in new ways, blurring the line between civilian and military at sea. On the innovation front, expect investments in autonomy, improved swarm coordination, better maritime launch and recovery systems, and hardened communications that resist jamming. For regional security, the Bagheri pressures adversaries to invest in cheaper countermeasures, reshaping procurement priorities away from expensive heavy platforms toward networks of sensors, electronic warfare, and directed energy defenses. The strategic picture thus shifts from a small number of exquisite platforms to a broader contest between massed, distributed offensive capabilities and layered, resilient defenses. The Shahed Bagheri is not a silver bullet, nor is it a simple gimmick. It is the logical extension of Iran's asymmetric strategy. Convert limitations into leverage by fielding platforms that exploit economics, dispersal, and ambiguity. In doing so, Tehran has forced navies, merchants, and policymakers to confront a future in which power can be projected cheaply, ambiguously, and persistently from the sea. The vessel will not neutralize U.S. or allied naval supremacy, but it will complicate operations, raise the price of intervention, and provide Iran with novel coercive instruments. The ultimate measure of its impact will depend on sustainment, doctrine, and countermeasure development. But the Shahed Bagheri has already done what weapons often aim to do. It changed perceptions, opened new operational possibilities, and forced strategic adaptation. The seas that were once dominated by a handful of carrier designs are now host to a different kind of contest, one in which software, networks, and massed autonomy matter as much as steel and reactors. If you found this deep dive useful, subscribe for more documentary analyses of emerging military technologies and their geopolitical consequences. Share your view in the comments. Do you think drone carriers like the Shahed Bagheri will become the norm in future conflicts? Or are they a short-lived curiosity? Tell us which aspect you want next. A technical breakdown of counter-drone lasers, a legal explainer on maritime unmanned warfare, or a field report synthesizing recent drone attacks in regional theaters. Hit like, ring the bell, and we'll bring you the next episode unpacking the technologies reshaping global security.